Hey everyone, so today I'm really excited. I'm coming to you from Dubai, the UAE, my actual hometown, and I'm going to be teaching you how to work with databases to get data, edit data, delete data, and add new data to databases. It's going to look like this, and we are going to use it in order to manage our tasks, okay, and track their progress. We're going to create new tickets from here. We're going to be able to edit the tickets too, and of course we are going to be able to delete them. Now, whilst this might look a little bit on the simple side, this is actually a more of an advanced tutorial. We're going to be doing context in React, as well as organized things. So there's going to be a lot of filtering and a lot of array work in here. So a lot to learn. I'm going to take things super, super slow. The only prerequisites you need to have are a basic understanding of JavaScript, HTML, CSS, React, and Node.js. Okay, so the basics there, but if you don't know that, then please feel free to code along anyway and Google things as you go along. So what are we waiting for? Let's get to it. Let's start off with making our database first. Okay, so let's do it. First off, we are going to start off by signing up to DataStax, which is the database management system that we are going to be using to manage our data for this Monday clone. Okay, so that's what we're going to be doing. I've already signed up to this many times, so I'm just going to sign in with Google, but please go ahead and register. This is free. You don't need to use your credit card or anything like that. So once you have registered, it should take you to this dashboard. Now, this is a free plan and you should currently be seeing free as well. So all I'm going to do is essentially go to create a database right here. And what should we call our database? Well, let's just call it Monday clone to make things easy. And the key space name is going to represent the kind of data that I want to store in this key space, which is going to be tickets. Okay, as our data is essentially going to look like this. So like little tickets that we update with our progress and so on. We can edit them, we can delete them. So yeah, that's what I'm going to do. Again, you don't need, this should say free. You don't need to pay for anything if you are just using this for personal reasons, like building this project. And let's go ahead and select a provider and region. So I'm just going to go Europe, West Europe, and create a database. And there we go. So now this will do its thing, essentially. You will see at the bottom here, right under where I've got all my other projects, you will see that this is pending. Okay, so we're going to wait for that to be active. However, in the meantime, I'm going to actually spin up my project in React. So let's go ahead and do that now. And we want this to be a React project. And I'm just going to call this Monday clone. And this will essentially use this command right here to create a project called Monday clone in whatever directory, in whatever location I have chosen on my computer. Okay, so I'm just going to go ahead and create that, and that will spin up my React app. Just like so. Now, for those of you using perhaps, VS Code or something, you can, of course, do the same in your terminals. So here I would go into WebStorm project, just like so. And what I would do is then use npx create React app. And whatever we call this Monday clone. So like that. But again, I'm not going to do it. So great, this should nearly now be done. So this is spinning up essentially my React app with all the configuration I need and all the files. So I'm just going to let this do its thing and come back to this in a bit. And there we go. Happy hacking. So you should now have a directory with all of these files in here and then a source directory with all of these. And to run this, well, all I'm actually going to do is just press this button right here to run the command npm start. Okay, so that will essentially take this command start and spin up my project in the browser. So once again, if you are doing this, in the terminal, you would just go into the project, which we can now go into because we have made it, and use npm run start. but we're not going to do it this way because we've used WebStorm. So I'm actually going to go ahead and delete this so we can start fresh. Let's go ahead and minimize that for now. So we don't need tests because we're not going to write any for this project. So we don't need the report, web vitals. We don't need the logo. So let's just go ahead and delete these three things. And then let's also delete this file. So I'm just going to delete this one too. And let's also delete the app CSS file, as I'm going to just put all my CSS in one place just to make our lives a little bit easier. Okay, of course, you can spread out the CSS if you wish. This is just my preference. So now in the index.js file, well, we don't have the web vitals anymore. So let's go ahead and delete that. Let's also get rid of all the semicolons and click Save. So this is what your index.js file should look like. And now let's go into the app.js file. So once again, we've deleted the logo. So I'm just going to delete that. We've deleted the app CSS file. And I'm going to make this a functional expression, just because, again, this is just my preference. You don't have to do this. And then just delete all these semicolons. So there we go. And now I'm just going to delete everything from in here too, so that it looks like this. Let's maybe change this to app. Okay, so this is looking good. One last thing to delete before carrying on. I'm just going to delete everything in this CSS file. And great. So we are now ready to start building our Monday clone. The first thing I'm going to do is actually just create a bunch of components that we will need. So in here, in the source directory, I'm going to make a new directory called components and another directory. So again, here, new directory called pages. So in the pages, I'm just going to create a new page. It's going to be a JavaScript file, and this is going to be for the dashboard itself. As we said, we want a place to see all the tickets. So let's go ahead and make a component for this. Let's export the component, export default dashboard, and then let's return some JSX. At the moment, I'm literally just going to return a div that says dashboard. Okay, so here we have our dashboard component. And next, let's also make another page. So let's call this ticket page, where we can actually see the ticket that we want to edit, or the ticket that we want to update. We just want a ticket page where the singular ticket is more visible. So I'm just going to paste that here again. And this time, I'm just going to select all three, and let's change this to ticket page. Okay, so there we go. So we've got our two pages. Now let's create some components. Now, what kind of components are we going to need? Well, first off, we're going to have the ticket card itself. So in the components directory, I'm going to make a new JavaScript file, and I'm going to call this ticket card. And once again, just paste this, select all of these, Control G, ticket card. Few more to do. Let's make another component, and this time let's call this the avatar display. And this is where our avatar is going to show up in the ticket itself. So once again, avatar display, making sure to spell it exactly the same way it is here. Okay, so we've got our avatar. The next thing we're going to need is a progress display. So once again, Control G, progress display. Thank you, tab 9. And then another one. And this is going to be the priority display. So priority display. And once again, Control G, priority display. And next we need the status display. So new JavaScript file, status display. Control G, Control G. Oops, maybe not all of that, all of this. Control G, status display. Okay, and I think that should be it. We also need a delete block, as each ticket has a delete block. So delete block. Once again, Control G, delete block. Okay, and one last thing now, we're going to need a nav bar. So I'm just going to make a nav component for our nav bar. Control G, nav. Wonderful. So now that we've created all of our components that we are going to need, let's get to displaying them all on our web page and get to making some pages. So I'm going to show you how to make the pages first with some routing. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to go into my app.js file. Now, in order to do some routing, I'm going to need the React routed on package. So let's go ahead and install that here. All I'm going to do is use my terminal and do npm I and install React router DOM, just like so, and wait for that to do its thing. And I'm just going to import it in here. So import browser router. We're also going to import root, and we're also going to import roots from the package we just installed called React router DOM. Okay, for those of you wondering, it's this package right here that has been installed. It is version 6, so if you are having any issues, it might be down to the version you're using, so just make sure that the version here is the same. You can just go ahead and change the number and run npm I again in order to install that particular package. That will actually install all the packages that you have in here, so just be aware of that. But I'm just going to put that back to the way it was. Okay, so I'm actually going to shut some of these down as well, so it's a little bit neater. There we go. And great. So we're importing these root and browser router from React router DOM. Now let's get to essentially using them. So here we have our app, and I'm now going to use the browser router, okay, just like so. And I am now going to use roots. So all the things that we've just imported, and each root we are going to now define. So I'm going to make this a self-closing tag. And the first root we have, well, we're going to have the path to this as the home page. So that is how we define the home page. And the element we want to show that if we visit the home page, so literally, /nothing, it's going to be our dashboard, right? So let's just put in the dashboard element, and it needs to actually be an element. So I'm just going to do that, and let's go ahead and import that now. So import dashboard from, and then we're going to have to find it. So we're going to go into the pages, and we're going to find our dashboard component. So that's all I'm doing. All I'm doing here is saying that if we visit the path /nothing, we retrieve the dashboard. And at the moment, our dashboard component just returns the word dashboard, right? So if we look in here, ta-da! So essentially, if we visit this path, we get the dashboard component. Hopefully that makes sense. Let's carry on. So here's one root. However, we can also define more roots. So if I visit /ticket, then I can perhaps, show the ticket page. So let's put ticket page as the component that we made right here. And all I'm going to do is import ticket page from, and then we find it in here. So we're going to go into pages and get the ticket page. So of course, what that means is that if we now visit / ticket, we'll get the ticket page component, right? Because our ticket page component at the moment just looks like this. I'm actually going to do one more thing, and this will be a little bit more obvious later. I'm going to use the ticket page component again, okay? Because we're going to have the ticket page, you know, just to see the ticket. And we're also going to have the ticket page in edit mode. So I'm going to say that if we visit ticket and then the exact ID that we pass through, we're going to see this in edit mode. So edit mode, true. Okay, this probably won't make sense to you much now, but it will later when we start, you know, building on to this. Great. So this is looking good for now. One last thing we need to do is just put in the nav. So the nav is just going to go on top of here, meaning that no matter what path we visit, okay, the nav bar is just going to be there. So let's go ahead and import that. Import nav from. This time we're going to go into the components and get the nav. So let's just check that works. Make sure the nav is above the roots. So here's our nav. And if we visit the home page, our nav is still there. Great. So I'm just going to format this a tiny little bit before moving on. So let's go ahead and use code, format code, and wonderful. So this is all looking fantastic. Let's carry on. So I think first off, maybe let's start off with the dashboard itself. So let's go ahead into the dashboard and start styling it up. So let's do it. So I'm just going to get rid of the word dashboard here, and maybe let's give this the class name of dashboard so that we can, you know, get to styling things up a little bit. So we're going to have the dashboard here. I'm just going to go ahead and put an h1 tag that says my projects that we are currently working on. And then in here, I'm actually going to make another div. And this time, this is going to have the class name of ticket container. And this is going to store all our tickets. Okay, so ticket container just like that. We don't really need these curly braces. And in here, well, I'm just going to essentially get the ticket card. So let's go ahead and import the ticket card. Import ticket card from, and then we have to go into the, let's go back into the components and let's get the ticket card. Okay, so at the moment, I mean, we're just going to have the ticket card here. Let's do a little bit of styling before moving on. So let's get our index CSS file up. And first off, I'm just going to start off with giving some generic styling to the overall HTML tag and the body tag. And I'm just going to make sure that everything is like super to the size by giving the margin 0 and padding 0 properties to both those things. And let's make everything have the font of I like Trebuchet Sans MS, sorry, Trebuchet MS, and then Sans Serif as a backup. I think that's good. Maybe also Arial as a backup as well. So there we go. And now the app itself, I'm just going to make sure that everything is going to essentially use Flexbox in the app itself. So just like that. And now, actually, while we are here, I'm also going to style the nav bar because this should be relatively easy and it will just help us, you know, decide how everything else is going to look. So the nav bar, well, let's go into the nav component right here. And I'm just going to delete this and replace it with 2 nav elements. So there we go, just a nav element that obviously is made up of 2, like an opening tag and a closing tag. And what do we want our nav bar to look like? Well, I'm going to have a logo, right? So let's call this logo container. Logo container. And the logo container, well, it's going to have an image, and this image is essentially going to be the logo. So source logo, alt logo. Okay, so of course we don't really have a logo at the moment, but I could just easily drag one in here. So I'm going to do that now. So in the source directory, I'm going to make another directory for all my images. And all I'm going to do is just drag in the image. So here we go. I'm just going to drag in the image just like so. Refactor. Okay, so obviously this is just a logo that I made. And I'm just going to do import. And what should we call this? Well, we could just keep it as CRM logo if we want. Import, and what should we call it? Let's just call it logo from images CRM logo. So we're getting this file, we're saving it as logo, and now we are putting that in here. So we've got the image. The next thing we're going to do is make another container actually, and this is going to be for some controls. So class name controls container this time, and in here I'm just going to have a div, and this div is going to have the class name icon. Okay, and let's also, oops, have two of these. However, they're going to do different things. Okay, because if we click on this one, so on click, I'm going to want to navigate. So this is something we're going to have to import from a React router DOM to the home page for this one. And for the second one, I'm just going to copy this. Maybe just make this a little bit bigger so people can see. On this one, I'm going to navigate to, well, actually, maybe let's navigate to the ticket here. And for this one, I'm just going to navigate to the home page. So here is some Unicode that I found that looks like this. So this kind of looks like, I guess, a back to the home page. And let's have a plus so that we can add a new ticket. So once again, I just found this. It's just Unicode. And if we now, oh, we need to also import navigate. So import use navigate from React router DOM. And then it's actually, so we have to do this in the component, define navigate, and that's going to use navigate, and we're just going to call it, okay? So that should now work. Let's check it out. So at the moment, here is our nav bar because we haven't styled anything. And if I press this, it should go to the home page. And if I press here, it should go to ticket. And it does. And then I go back again, home page. Okay, now let's style this up a little bit. So let's go back in here. And I just want this to be the height, so 100 view of the browser. And then let's give it a background color. So background color, and let's use RGB, 434363. And now the color of the font is going to be white. So I know that is, oops, white. I'm going to do text align center. We're also going to do display flex because we want to position everything in the center of this nav bar, right? So display flex, flex direction, column and space between. Sorry, this should be justify content space between. Okay, so that will mean that we are essentially, getting everything in here and spacing this, okay, logo container from the controls container so that the space in between them is equal. However, this logo is way too big, so let's style that too. So in the nav, I'm going to find anything with the class of logo container. And in fact, also the controls container. So nav controls container. And I'm going to say that, well, let's give them a padding of 40 pixels from the top and bottom and 25 pixels from the left and right. Display, flex, flex, direction, column. And let's also, just for the logo container, the image actually that's in it, let's make sure that its width is only 20 pixels. Okay, and also for everything with the class of icon that exists in the nav, I'm also wanting to make them white. Oops. Great. So now you will see here is our logo container, and here's our controls container with both of these things in there, and they're spaced out evenly. This is only max 20 pixels, and everything's just nicely centered. I don't know why the plus isn't white though. That's strange, because I've just said that they should both be white. Maybe it's fill. Let's check that out. No. Okay, well, we'll come back to this. It's strange. Let's just carry on for now, but that's really it's really weird. I would have thought that would change white because this is technically considered to be text. Maybe let's try another one. I mean, we could just try this one. Okay, that's very small, but I think it's probably better because we can see it. Great. Just one last time. Let me just try this one. Okay, 1 second. I just want it to be a little bit bigger. And great. Okay, I'm happy with that. Of course, please feel free to style us up however you wish. And let's start styling the dashboard. So I'm just going to copy this, paste that here, and let's just move that up for now. So the dashboard. Well, we're going to grab the dashboard element, so the element with the class name of dashboard, and I'm just going to give it some padding just to space it out from the nav bar at all times. And then let's also make sure that its width is 100%, so width 100%. Okay, and now let's also get this ticket container. So we gave the class of ticket container already. And the ticket container, well, I only want this actually to have a height of 80 of the browser, and I want overflow to be scroll, so that if we get any more tickets, then we'll scroll through them, right? We can scroll through them without the whole page moving, which means that the title will always be here, and we'll be able to scroll this square, okay, this rectangle if you wish. Of course, we don't have anything in there yet, so we can't really scroll. There is no overflow. Cool. So this is looking good. Now let's get to styling up the ticket card. So in here, what I'm going to do is give this the class name of ticket card, which means that I'm just going to get rid of ticket card in here. And Let's just grab this once again. I just want to make sure that our organization is good. Ticket card, just like so. And let's grab the ticket card. And we're going to say that anything in the ticket card, so display flex, is going to be kind of displayed next to each other. And let's make sure that the ticket card is 100% width of its parent. And let's go into the ticket card now and start building it out. So I'm just going to make this a little bit bigger for you again. Just move this along and wonderful. Now, to make our ticket card, well, we're going to have to actually import most of these things. So I'm going to do that up here. I'm going to import avatar display from avatar display, just like so. I'm going to import the, what's next, the status display from status display. Then I'm going to import the, for the avatar, the status, the priority display from priority display. Import the progress display, that's another one. And then we also need to import the delete block. So import delete block from delete block. And now let's put them all in. So here's our ticket card. The next thing we're going to do, actually, I just want a little bit of color, right? I just want a little bit of color, as we saw from the beginning, on the side here to show up. This is going to be, you know, colored in a way, but for now, I'm just going to give this the class name of ticket color because we don't really know what color we're going to give it yet. So we've got that, and then we're also going to link everything in here. So if we click on the ticket card, not the ticket color, I mean, it's small anyway. We could put this in the link, actually. Maybe we should. Anyway, let's import links so we can use it from React Router DOM as well. Link will just allow us to link to somewhere else, okay? That's essentially what link is, just does what it says on the box. So import link from React Router DOM. And then in here, well, I'm just going to use all the, I guess, components. I'm also going to put an h3 tag that will essentially give us our title, which we don't have yet. So I'm just going to put title like that for now. And then let's put in the avatar display. Let's also put in the status display. Let's put in the, I'm literally just going through all of them, priority display, the progress, oops, not that one, the progress display. And then we have the delete block. But the delete block is actually also going to be out this link because we don't want to link the, if we click on the delete block, we don't want to be then taken to another page, right? We just want to delete that ticket, which is why it's not in here. However, I am going to put this in here. Why not? I think that makes more sense. Yeah. Yeah, we'll see. Okay, so this is looking good. However, not very exciting, right? I think let's maybe like make some fake data. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to put in some fake data here for us. Just going to say const data like so. And let's make some fake data so that we can start working with this. So perhaps actually let's just call this tickets because that's exactly what it's going to be. Tickets, plural. And it's going to be an array of objects. And each object is going to have a category. I'm going to say this is Q1 2022. It's going to have a color, which in this case is going to be red. So I'm just going to hard code that for now. The title, let's just say NFT Safety 101 video. Owner Ania Kubo. So again, this is just very, very fake data that I have made. We need an avatar of me. So I'm just going to go on the internet. I'm going to take one from Free Code Camp. Just stick that in here. That's my avatar. Status, I'm going to hard code as done. Then we're going to have a priority. Priority. And I'm going to say this is 5. Progress. If I can only spell today, progress is going to say 40. That's going to be a percentage. Progress. And then we're going to have a description. This is a description of the task. Make a video showcasing how to work with NFTs safely, including how to know if one is not genuine. Okay, so this is just a description that I have. And then I'm also going to give this a timestamp. So this is essentially how I want my ticket objects to look like in the future. Okay, so, and this is even the way that I want my timestamps to be written. So we've got the year, the month, the day, and then let's also give it a time. Okay, so great. There we go. There is one object, and I'm just gonna copy this. And for this one, I'm actually just going to, like, obviously this is just for us at the moment, so we can work with stuff, build and sell AI model. Status, let's put working on it, priority 4 or 2, doesn't really matter, 70. Make a video, again, delete about AI. Timestamp, let's maybe put this forward a few days. So we only have 2 in here for now. This is our dummy data. We're not going to be using it. I just wanted to show you what it should look like and get something working, right? So there we go. And now I'm going to use that dummy data to map it onto our ticket cards that we just made so we can style them up a little bit better. So maybe actually sorry, I'm just going to do one more because we want a category that isn't unique. Let's make this Q2. This color is going to be blue. This title is going to be build a bot. Also by me working on it, priority 3, progress 10. Make a video about making a bot. And let's put this as 15. Okay, so now what I want to do is I want to take all this information and map out each ticket, but I also want to group them by categories. So to do this, first off, I need to find all the unique categories in my array. So let's write a function to do that. So const unique categories, And how do we get the unique categories? Well, all I'm going to do is go into the tickets. And because we're actually going to be getting this from our database, I first need to check if tickets exist. Obviously now it does. And then I'm going to map, okay? And I'm going to go into each of the objects. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to go into the object and get the category of each object. And then I'm just going to return it. So this essentially is just getting me each of the categories from this array of objects. And I'm going to check if they are unique. So I'm going to make I guess, we're going to get the unique values. And I'm going to do so with the set object from JavaScript and just pass all of this through. Okay, so then this is essentially creating, it's giving me all the unique values and it's putting it in an array, and that will then be my unique categories. Okay, so now if I console log unique categories, let's have a look in here, and inspect console. Okay, we're getting just the unique ones. So we have 3 objects, obviously, with category Q1 2022, category another one of this, and another one of this. And all we're doing is just returning an array of the unique ones. So that is what this piece of code does. So if you ever have an array of objects and you just want to go through all the properties and just look for unique values of a single property and put them in an array, that is what it can do. Okay, so now that we have the unique categories, I'm going to map them on, right? So if tickets exist, and so if obviously they do here, but when we get them from the database, we need to check they exist, and the unique categories exist, I'm going to map each unique category. So unique category. And I'm also going to get the index. I'm going to call this a category index so we can differentiate from the other index that we're going to have. So category index. And now I'm going to just use a div so let's make that a closing div. And this is going to just be a div to hold the essential, I guess, category name. So I'm going to put this in here. So the unique category name is going to go here. And on this div, I'm just going to give it the category index. Okay, so there we go. So we're mapping, imagine we've got all the unique categories, there's 2 at the moment. So we just mapped out 2 things. And now in these 2 things, we need to map out more. So it's like mapping in mapping. So now let's get the tickets. And this time I'm going to filter out the ticket. So for each ticket in my tickets, I'm going to check that the ticket category equals the unique category. Okay, so that's all I'm doing. Oops, this should be in here. And then I'm going to map out the return of this onto the ticket cards. So I'm going to map out the filtered ticket and also the ticket index onto a ticket card. Okay. That's a ticket. Yeah, cool. That looks good. And each ticket card is going to have an ID. Well, actually, we don't really need this, so let's just do index. Index. The ID, this just means that we don't really, like it doesn't matter. We're not going to really be using it. The color, which is going to be the color. For now, I'm just going to use this color. So the filtered ticket color, even though we won't be using this later. And then the ticket itself. So I'm just going to pass through the whole filtered ticket. Okay. So of course, at the moment, you won't really see much here. But if we now go into the ticket card and let's pass through these 3 things. So that is, well, actually, we're just going to get the color and the filtered ticket. And now from that filtered ticket, we get all the data we need. So that will be the filtered ticket title, for example. So if we look in here, it's not liking something. Cannot read title. Filtered ticket title. Filtered, it's ticket, sorry, not filtered ticket. Ticket. Now, while we are here, we also need to address this link, otherwise this will break, or we could just comment it out for now. Perhaps let's just do that. Okay. And there we go. So as you will see, each ticket here is the title is being mapped out. So these two titles are being mapped out under the category, which is Q1 2022. And this title is going under the title Q2 2022. So this is looking good. Now let's style this up before we go any further. So let's get back to our CSS. So what I'm going to do is actually give this link. Okay, let's actually just put in, I'm going to give this an ID of link. And for now, let's make it go somewhere. I'm going to just make it go to, this will be written, of course, a little bit later on. So I'm going to make this go to / ticket and then just whatever the ticket ID is. So it's going to be ticket, and then we're going to get the document ID of the ticket that we are retrieving. Okay, so that will be something we're going to do later when it comes to working with our database. So let's save that, and now let's go in here, and now let's get the ticket card and get the ID of link. And I'm going to say that everything in here is going to have display flex width 100. So the link is going to be of width 100. And now anything in the link, so anything in here essentially, so all of it's children. So I'm going to say everything in here. That's how you would write that. It's going to have a background color of just that. Just make it, give it a small margin, give it some padding as well. Width 100, so each one is width 100. Display flex align items center. So already you will see I've added this gray background to everything, and everything is a bit more, I guess, spaced out evenly and centered. Okay, so our ticket is shaping up kind of nicely. Let's carry on. So in fact, I am going to move this out here because I don't want that to have the same styling as everything in here. So let's just put that there. And now I'm going to say that the thing we just moved, so that had the class name of ticket color, is going to have a width of 15 pixels and a margin of 2 pixels. Okay. So great. So I can't decide whether we should just keep it in there or not, but I mean, I don't know why I'm making this. Let's just put it back. And then let's override this. Okay, so after this is all red, let's give this important. So that is over red, so that the width will be 15 pixels. Okay, so I think that's fine. That's essentially the ticket color thing. But it's also been given like this huge padding. Okay, padding 0 pixels. And again, let's make that important. Padding 10 pixels. Again, I'm just messing around with this now. The avatar container was also going to have a different kind of styling. So the avatar container, well, because it's going to display an image and I want the image to be centered, I'm going to do display flex justify content center. and make this have a width of 80 pixels. Okay, so that's the avatar display. Let's get rid of the words from it though. And give this the class name of avatar container. Let's make this maybe a little bit bigger. Now I'm just going to put an image tag. And this image tag, well, actually, let's actually also put this in an image container so that we can, you know, chop off anything that we don't want to be seen. And we can center the image to kind of fit the container. So let's give this the class name image container. Okay, so that's kind of important. And in here, well, the source of this is going to be the tickets avatar, right? So ticket avatar, or if that does not exist, so check if that exists. So yeah, if that does exist, ticket, show the ticket avatar or show blank avatar. And we're going to import a blank avatar in here. And the alt is going to say alt, what should it say? Photo of, and then I'm just going to put ticket owner. Cool, so that means we have to pass through, of course, the ticket into here, and let's import a blank avatar. So import, we've called this blank avatar from, and let's go ahead and drag that in here. So all I'm going to do is drag this blank profile avatar into my images directory, factor from, and then we're going to go into the images. So we need to go out of here, images, blank profile avatar. Great. So something's obviously not really working. Undefined avatar. Okay, that's fine. Passing through the ticket. Okay, so then we need to pass through the ticket in here. Ticket. Okay, great. So once again, let's go back in here. And this time get the ticket card and get the image container. And let's say that the height of these image containers is going to be 50 pixels. The width is going to be 50 pixels. And the border radius is going to be 25 pixels, right? Because we want to be a circle. And I'm also going to say overflow hidden. Okay, so at the moment, this kind of looks like this, but we want to center whatever image we put in here. So all I'm going to do now is grab this and say that whatever image exists in here, because as you will see, we've got the image container, and the image that exists in here is going to have a width of 100%. Okay, so now whatever the image, if it's a square, if it's not a square, the width will always be the size of the circle. Okay, the height won't be, I know, but you know, like hopefully people don't put images that are like rectangular like this. But again, it's a styling issue. If you want to mess around this more, please go ahead. So let's continue. We've got the avatar sorted. Now let's move on. Now it's time to move on to, so we've done the avatar display. I'm just gonna shut that down. Next, let's move on to the status display. So let's go ahead and get that up. Let's just make it a little bit bigger. Now, the status display, this is actually one of the easier ones because all we're going to do is pass through the status of whether, you know, something is done or not. And I'm actually going to do a write a function to get a certain color based on what the status is. So I'm going to write get color, just like so. Okay, and let's pass through the status, and then let's actually start off with the color just being nothing, and I'm going to write a switch statement. So I'm going to switch out the status, and if the status is done, the color, what I'm going to assign to color is going to be the string RGB 186 255 201. Okay, and then I'm going to break. However, if the case is working on it, well, then I want the color, the variable color, to be assigned the string RGB 255 223 186. Okay, and we're going to break out of this. Or if the case is stuck, we're going to have color be the string RGB. This should be a string. Why is this not a string? Okay. It was a string. The string will be RGB 255 179 186. Okay. Let's break out of this, and then we're also going to have a default color, just for whatever reason, even though that shouldn't happen. We're going to have the color just return. Sorry, we're going to assign this string to the color variable, which is 186 225 255. Okay, and then we're just going to return whatever the color is after that switch statement. So great. So we're getting a color that's going to be returned when we call this function and pass through a status. Now let's get to the JSX. So I'm going to delete this and give this the class name of status display. And in here, well, all I'm going to pass through is the status itself. So we should say like done, working on it, stuck. But we're actually going to put the style in here. So we're going to style this up, not from the CSS, but based off the JavaScript. So I'm just going to say that the background color of this should be the get color, and we're going to pass through the status and whatever color is returned. Okay, so that means let's go ahead and to status display, we need to pass through the status. So in here, status, whoops, status, ticket, status. It's all going to pass through, just one thing. And there we go. So now if it's done, it's got this green color. If we're working on it, it's got this orangey color. And, you know, if that's something else, it'd be a different color too. Great. So of course we'll come back and style this, or perhaps maybe let's just do it quickly now, because I think we're done with this here. It could be nice to change this up a little bit if you wish. It's going to be completely up to you what kind of green you want this, and so on. So we'll come back to that later. But this for now is done. So in here, let's do some more styling up. So let's get the ticket card, and let's get the status display. And all we're going to do is make sure that it is kind of centered. So justify content center. Okay, great. So now let's move on. Let's move on to the priority display. So once again, let's just get up the priority display. Let's make it a little bit bigger, and let's do some coding. So for the priority display, well, we're going to pass through the priority. Okay, so just like that, which means that in here, the priority is going to be the ticket priority. And now let's just get rid of this, and I'm going to give this the class of priority display. So class name priority display. and I'm going to make a div, and this I'm actually just going to make this kind of like just show up stars, right? So star container, because the highest priority is going to be 5. So let's put in 5 stars in here. I'm again just going to use Unicode for this. So let's maybe go ahead and grab, not that one, maybe this one. Just copy here. Just paste that in here like so. And again, I'm just going to style this up in the JSX itself. So all I'm going to do is say that the color, because this is text, right? So we use the color property like so. If priority, because this is a number, is larger than or equal to 1, so if that is true, I want the color of this star to be yellow. So I'm going to use 253, 253, 150. Okay, otherwise, if it's not, then I just want nothing. I don't want to color it. Okay, so that's all I'm going to do. I'm going to do this 5 times. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and of course, just change this number. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So let's check it out. Okay, so there you go. This one had a priority of 5. That's why it's got that many. This one had 2, and this one had 3. And of course, we need to style it up and get rid of all this. I don't like the links because that's kind of messing things up for us. So let's go ahead and do that. We are done with this page. So I'm just going to shut that down. Just go into here. And right in here, because I don't want any links, so anything with the ID of link, it's going to have text decoration none, and then just this kind of more grayish color. Okay, so now that looks kind of like it's, not a star. There's a potential for 5, but there isn't 5. And let's also make sure that this goes not in a column, but in a row. So once again, I'm going to grab the ticket card, and this time I'm going to do priority display. And once again, I'm going to do display flex and justify content center. Why is that not being applied? It's in the star container. So perhaps star container, just make sure that everything is kind of centered. Okay, great. And then let's also just make sure that they're all kind of spaced out from each other. So all the H3 tags are spaced out from each other. I'm going to give them all a margin of 7 pixels, padding 0, and yeah, I'm kind of happy. Oops. With that. Wonderful. So now the progress display and the delete block to go. Let's do it. Maybe let's just move this out a little bit and carry on. So let's get rid of this now. Let's get rid of, actually, let's keep that and let's make this a little bit bigger. And of course, here we're just going to pass through the progress. So in here, let's pass through the progress, the ticket progress. Great. And all I'm going to do, let's return a div with the class name progress display this time. And in here, I'm just going to make a progress bar. Okay, so let's give this the class name of the actual progress bar itself. Progress bar. And in our progress bar, we're going to have essentially a div, right, that will change width based on how much progress we've done. So for this, again, I'm just going to style it up in here. So style width is going to be whatever the progress is, because it's a number, we can do that, plus the percentage string. Okay, so that's going to fill out the percentage we want. And let's give this the name, class name, progress indicator. So this is how we can style it up also a little bit in the CSS. So I'm just going to save this and go back to the CSS file and go into the ticket card again and get the progress display. Let's give it a min width of 200 pixels at all times. And now let's get the actual progress bar and say that its width is going to be 100% of the parent, which is the progress display, and the height is going to be 30 pixels at all times. And then the background color. Well, the background color, I'm going to just choose 158, 158, 158. So it's this kind of like grayish color. And let's round it off, border radius. Let's give it 15 pixels. So it's kind of like a pill shape. And then any overflow we have is going to be hidden. Okay, so that's what it looks like at the moment. And now let's do the progress indicator. So in the progress bar is where the progress indicator lives. Progress indicator. And well, this, we're just going to give it a background color, right? Because we're assigning the width in the JSX, and this is going to be kind of like a bluish color that I picked out earlier. And the height is going to be 100%. The width we've already taken care of, as I said, in the JSX. So there we go. Why are they all at 100%? That is not correct. Let's have a look. Let's go back in here. Passing through the ticket, the progress. And there we go. That is looking good. The progress is changing. So wonderful. Now we are actually done with this. So let's get rid of that. And now let's focus on the delete block. So we're slowly getting through all of these. Let's do it. Now the delete block, we're going to be doing some requests to our database in here for this. But for now, I'm literally just going to make a little block that will let us do this really quickly. So let's style this up to make it look like a delete block. So I'm just going to call this delete block, and I'm going to put a div in here and give it the class name delete icon. And I'm just going to put a delete icon in here. Again, it's going to be, you know, it's my favorite, some Unicode. And on click of this, we're going to delete ticket. So of course we are yet to write this. So const delete ticket equals, and for now I'm just going to do console log deleted. Of course, it's not really doing anything at the moment, deleted. So that's what happens when you click on it. And in here, I'm just going to put a little X, paste that in here like so. I'm going to delete this now because we're done with that. And let's get the ticket card once again. Delete block. give it a background color. We're going to have to start this up to be like the other ones, but not like, it's not in the link, right? Because as I mentioned, I don't want us going to another page. If we click on the delete block, I want us to actually just delete the ticket. So that's why I have to kind of apply the same styling that I did above to this. Justify content, center, align items, center. Okay, and then let's also get the actual delete icon. And give it a width of 20 pixels, a height of 20 pixels, a border radius of 10 pixels, a background color, going to be RGB 616161. Display, flex, justify content, center, and then align. Items, again, center, and finally, let's make the color of the X white. So RGB 255, 255, 255. And great. So there it is. It's not centering though. I must have misspelled something. Display flex. We didn't add display flex in here. So justify content and align items wasn't applied. Save that. And wonderful. So this is looking so good. One last thing we're going to do is just add a different color here based on the category. So I'm going to show you how to do that. And then it's going to be time to, you know, style up our ticket pages and then make some requests to our database. So let's go. So back in the ticket card, I'm going to deal with the colors on the ticket color div, which are being passed through from the dashboard. So what I'm going to do is just make a array of colors. Okay, so here are some colors that, once again, I've just pre-made. They're kind of like the pastel colors on the website. Not exactly though, but we can change this later if we wish. So there's one RGB. Make sure they are strings. They have to be strings. I believe. I think so. I've been thinking this has to be strings for a very long time. So yes, I do think so. If it doesn't, then let me know. RGB, let's go with 255, 255, 186, and just a few more pastelish like colors that I have pre-made for us. 201, and one last one, RGB 186, 255, 255. Okay, so we've got an array of colors. Now, all I'm really going to do is just pick one of these each time that we create a category, essentially. So I'm just going to kind of go through them. And once we hit, you know, over 5 categories, then it's just going to be the same color. But I mean, I think that's fine. Why not? Like, if you want to add more to this, then please be my guest. So that means that each time we are dealing with a category, we're going to get the category index. I'm going to use that category index to pass through the colors array and give that as a color to the color here. So we're going to get the colors and just pass through the category index from our first mapping to make sure that each ticket has the same color based on the category it is in. Okay, and as a default, you know, like if we run out of colors here, I'm just going to get the first color in our array. So this means that now, oops, so we're passing this through into the ticket card, and that's being passed through into here, and we're also going to have to style this. So style, background, color, it's going to be the color that is passed through. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense. And there we go. So now each category is going to have its own color. Wonderful. So great, we've done that, and now let's get to creating the ticket page in which we can add new tickets, but also edit existing tickets. So let's do it. So we are now done with this for now, I believe. We are done with the dashboard for now, I believe. We are done with the app now, I believe. Let's get the ticket page up and just make it bigger. So first off, let's actually create the JSX for this. So I'm going to go ahead and in here, I'm going to give this the class name of ticket, just like so. And this ticket, well, our ticket is going to have an H1 tag, and this is actually going to change. So I'm going to have an edit mode, and if edit mode exists, then we're going to be in edit mode, and I want this to say update ticket. However, if we're not in update mode, I just want it to say create a ticket. Okay, pretty cool, right? Let's actually just define edit mode up here, and I'm going to say false for now. So we're going to be working with edit mode being false, which means it's going to say create a ticket. Okay, so that's the H1 tag. The next thing I'm going to do is just create a div, and this div is going to be our ticket container. So ticket container, just like that. And this is going to contain our form. And of course, with every form, we're going to have an on submit, and this is going to handle our submit. So let's define handle submit here. For now, it's just going to say submitted because we haven't really done anything for this yet. So console log submitted. Okay, so there we go. And our form is actually going to be made up of sections, okay, because I want to style up a little bit so it's a bit cooler. So our first section is going to be here. And in this section, well, I'm going to create a label because the first input we're going to have is going to be for the title. HTML4 title, or we don't need, we just need this as a string. And now let's create our input. So here's our input, self-closing. So this is going to have the ID of title. It's also going to have the name of, you guessed it, title. So the type is going to be text. So let's put text on change. Well, at the moment, we're just going to handle change. So just like we did with the handle submit, because a lot is going to be going on in this function. So let's just copy this, paste that, and change this to handle change, changed. And then let's put this as required true. I want this to be required. And the value of this, well, this is going to be the form data title. Okay, because as I said, I'm just going to make an object. I'm going to be saving a bunch of stuff to state in an object. So for this, we're going to use state. So we're going to need to import use state from React. Now const form data. We're going to set the form data using use state. And what do we want as our initial state? Well, I'm going to hard code some things in this object. Okay, so this starting state is going to have a status of not started, because that makes sense, right? Whenever we create a ticket, it's going to be not started as a default. And of course, the progress is also going to be 0, which we can change later, but this is how it's going to start. And the timestamp is going to be today's date. So I'm going to use the date object for this from JavaScript, new date, and I'm going to change it to this ISO string that we are wanting to use. Okay, so there you go. However, we can also add stuff like the title. So at the moment, the value of this is going to be null, but on change, I essentially want to add that to my form data. So actually, let's go ahead and do that now. I'm just going to show you here. So on the handle change, well, I just want to get the value. So target value of my input, and let's save this to value. I also want to get the name, okay? Because I want to use the name to add another property to my object. So let's do that. Const name equals target name. So now all I have to do is use set form data, and I'm going to pass through the previous state, so this state right here, and I'm going to just, get the previous state and add the name and the value. So hopefully this makes sense. I'm going to console log this out for you so you can see what is happening. Console log form data. So let's open this up. So like I said, at the moment, this is the state of our form data. It's got the progress series, it's got the status on the side, it's got a timestamp of today. However, now if I start typing in here, we have literally added the title. Okay, we've gotten into the target's name and created a property, and then we're just adding the value based on target value. So that's pretty cool, right? We are getting the target's name, and then we're literally just creating another property key or key value thing to our object. Wonderful. So hopefully that makes sense because we're going to add a lot more inputs in this way. So we've got our title. Next, also, let's have a description. I'm just going to paste this and then change a couple of these. So Control G to description. Change this one to description. It's also text, and all of this is fine. And this also needs to be description, just like so. Next, we're going to have the categories. But we also want to display all the categories we already have. We also want an option to essentially create a new category. So this is going to be for new categories. So I'm just going to use Control G, new category. And this is going to say new category, just like so. ID, new category, name. However, this should be category because we're going to add a category from here or from our drop down where we select an existing category, and this should be form data category. So this means that we need to create another label here with a select. So label, that should be here, and this is going to say category, and it's going to have a select drop down. So select, like so, and this should just be, yeah, that's fine actually. And in this select, I'm going to give this again the name of category, the value of form data category, just like below, and on change handle change. So there we go. However, in here, I'm just going to map out the categories. Categories, of course, at the moment, that's if they exist, we're going to be getting them from our database. And we're going to get each category. So I'm going to need an index. And we are just going to map out each category onto an option in the select. So option. Sure, that looks like this. And then we're just going to put the category in here and also give this the value of category. So you can pick it up, category. But we also need to give this a key, otherwise we'll get loads of errors. Well, not errors, but warnings. So let's also put the index of this here. Great. And at the moment, we don't really have categories because we are not We're going to be saving them to the app in context, but for now, I'm just going to kind of like just hard code them for you. So const categories equals test1, test2, just so you can see what this will look like. Okay. So this is everything that deals with categories. We either choose an existing category or we create a new category. So great, this is looking good. The option value. Categories, map, categories. Oops, this should be two separate strings. Okay. Let's just check that has worked. That's better. Okay, so we are done with the category part. Next, let's move on to the priority. So I'm just going to, once again, this time I am going to create a label, spell it correctly. And this time I'm going to make a div that's going to be a multiple container for multiple inputs. So class name multiple input container, and then the input. Well, the first input is going to have an ID of I really hate spelling priority. Priority 1. The name of this is going to be priority, as that's what the key we want for our form data is, priority. The type of this is going to be a radio button. And on change, we're going to handle change. And the value of this is going to be 1. And then if it's checked, I just want to, like show it's checked. So if form data priority equals 1, then I want this to be true and I want this to be checked. Okay, and then let's also maybe give this a label below so that we know visually that this is for priority 1, HTML 4, and then we're going to pass through the ID of priority 1. So that's not visually, that's just for our code. Okay, so there we go. We've made one of these. We need to make 5 more. So let's copy that. Just going to paste 2, 3, 4, 5, and I'm simply just going to change the numbers around. So this is going to be 5, oops, 2, sorry, 2, ID 2. The name stays the same, value 2, and if priority equals 2, then this is checked. Again, this is going to be 3, so perhaps we can do Control G, 3, and for this one, so Control G, 4, and last one, Control G, 5. So there we go. So now if we look in here, we get the priority. Okay. So we've done that. Now let's also have the progress bar. But we know that the progress bar is 0, right? So we only really want the progress bar to be shown in edit mode. Okay. Because only in edit mode do we want to change the value of the input, the progress bar, sorry, because as default, when we create a new ticket, it should be 0. So the type of this is going to be range. The ID of this is going to be progress. The name is also going to be progress. The value is going to be form data progress. We're going to have min as 0, max as 100, and on change, handle change. And let's also give this a label, progress, and once again, HTML4. progress, ID progress. Okay, so this looks like that, and then you should be able to change it. However, we only want to see this in edit mode. So I'm just going to wrap this all up actually in the edit mode variable. So only show all of this if we are in edit mode. And we also need to just put a wrapping div around this. It could just be an empty one. That is fine. Okay. So there we go. I will format this later, I promise. So that's what is showing in edit mode only. We also need to add the status because we only want to show the status also in edit mode. So perhaps I'm just going to comment this out for now so you can see it for now. So once again, let's make a label. And this will say status. And we're going to have a select dropdown for this, which I think we can hard code, right? Because it's not really going to change. So let's have name, status, value, form, data status, and then on change, handle change. And then of course the options, right? So I'm just going to hard code these as I said, because there really isn't much to these. So here's one option. So selected, this, I'm not saying this is selected, by the way, I'm saying selected if form data status equals done, then this is true. Okay, so that's all I'm doing, and the value of this option is done. So again, I will fix all these. I know I'm using like quotation marks all over the shop, but I'll quickly format this page when we finish. I'm just getting the code done. So there's one option, and then we have four more. So let's change done this time to Control G. So we've got this one, then we've got working on it, working on it. Then we have stock. So let's change this to Control G, stock. And this one, Control G, is going to be not started. So let's change this to not started. Okay. So there we go. Progress, status. This is looking so good. So now I'm just going to also have, oh yeah, let's uncomment this as we only want to show this if we are in edit mode. But for everyone, we need an input that essentially is for the type submit, so we can submit it. So there's one section. I did say we want two sections. The other section I'm just going to have for my avatar and stuff. So opening tag, closing tag, and then let's have a label that says owner, and this is going to be HTML for owner. And let's once again have an input. I'm actually just going to steal one of these. What's going on here though? What does this not like? Oh no. Okay, that was the closing tag for this. That was the wrapping div. Okay, so let's just steal one with a type text. I'm going to take this input. So label HTML for owner. Change this to owner name, owner text, handle change required true form data owner. And then we just have the avatar left. So once again, I'm just going to copy all this. And now this is going to be for Control G avatar. And this is going to say avatar. And then this type is actually going to be URL. Okay. Going to be using URLs for this. And something quite cool that I'm going to show you how to do is just show an image preview. So give this the class name image preview. And if form data avatar exists, then we're going to show the image of it. Okay, so image source form data avatar. And let's put an alt. This is going to say image preview. Great. So this is looking, I mean, it doesn't look good, but it is looking okay. We just need to sign it up. So let's go ahead and do that. So in my index CSS, I'm just going to move this down a little bit, like so. And now let's get some styling for the ticket page. I'm just going to comment this out. And let's do it. So the ticket itself is going to have a padding of 30 pixels and a width of 100%, so that it takes up the whole page but isn't that close to the nav bar. And then the ticket container that lives inside the ticket page container is going to also have width 100%. Display flex, this needs to be justify content center, because we want it centered. Now, also on the ticket page, any form that exists inside of that is also going to be display flex. I just want to initialize flexbox. And once again, any form that exists on the ticket page and any section that exists in that is going to have display flex. Direction of everything in each section is going to be column though, so it's stacked on top of each other, and each section is also going to have just a bit of a margin, and the width of each one is going to be just hard coded at 500 pixels. Okay, so already you can see how this is looking. That's what I have done. Now I'm just going to space out each label. So once again, I'm just going to go into the form. So I'm just going to grab that and get any label, and the margin that I'm going to apply to it is going to be 20 pixels 0, 0, 0. So I'm literally just going to move it 20 pixels at the top like so. And I'm just going to move this up a tiny bit. And again, this time, let's get the select element that lives inside the form. And what I'm going to do is essentially say that each of the selects is going to have padding of 10 pixels, give it a font size of 15 pixels. Let's round it off a little bit, perhaps border radius of 10 pixels. Make sure to spell that correctly. And then a border. Now my border is going to be 1.5 pixels wide. It's going to be solid, and I'm going to give this like grayish color. So once again, it's one I have pre-made for us. And let's give it a margin of 5 pixels. So there we go. That's what our select looks like. And I'm just going to add the same kind of styling to the input. Let's maybe say that we want to do this for the selects, but also any inputs that live inside the form ticket. So both of these. Great. So that is immediately looking better. Now let's just space out all of these which live in the multiple input container. So once again, oops, this should be font size. Let's grab the ticket form, and anything with a class of multiple input container that lives inside the form gonna be, let's use display flex on it, and I'm also going to do margin 20 pixels, 0, 20 pixels, 0, okay, to make them all look like this essentially. And then I'm not sure we need this. Okay, so maybe let's just get rid of that. And then why does it start from 2? What have I done here? So here is the first one, label priority 1. It would seem, okay, we're going to put the label below each one. So this should be 2. This should be a 3. This should be a 4. And this should be a 5. Okay, just so we can label each one of these a little bit better. There we go. Okay, it's time to start hooking this up to our database. So let's do it. So let's just get rid of these. Now I'm going to have to set up a backend, but I'm just going to do this with one file. Okay, there's no need to, build out a whole other backend for this. So I'm going to show you how to do this quickly. So here is essentially going to be my front end. And now I'm just going to create a file in the root of my project, and I'm going to call this server.js. Okay, so this one file is going to be our backend for this project, and all of this is going to be the front end. Now, to run the backend, well, first off, I'm going to need a few things. I'm going to need a few packages. So up in my terminal, in the same directory, I'm just going to install the packages express, which is going to help us with the routing, cause, and then we're also going to have Axios so that we can make requests, and .env so that we can store our variables securely. Okay, so those are the packages that we need for this project. Let's just go ahead and install them. If you haven't used these packages before, please stop here and do have a research of them. Okay, please go ahead and look them up. I'm just going to go ahead and carry on. One package we did also forget is Nodemon, which is going to help us listen out to changes on our backend. So just go ahead and install Nodemon as well. Okay. So once all those packages have been installed, you should see them show up here. And there they are. Okay, so there we go. Those are all the packages that we need. Nodemon for some reason did not install. Let's just run it again. So we're just going to install that packages so that it installs in here. Once again, if for some reason maybe your project isn't working, it could be down to the package you are using. So just go ahead and change it up. So change it up and reinstall all the packages using npm-i to reinstall them again. Okay, so that is just something that you need to know. Great. So once we have that, actually we do need to do one more thing in the package.json. We need to write a separate script. So I'm just going to stop this from running. So my front end has stopped, and I'm going to write 2 separate scripts. So this is going to be start front end to start our front end just like we did before. And I'm also going to write start backend, which is going to listen out for changes on our backend. So I'm going to use Nodemon, the package that I just installed, to listen out for changes on the server.js file. Okay, so now let's, I guess, run these scripts. So in one terminal, I'm just going to do npm run start front end and wait for that to do its thing. And in another, I'm going to do npm run, oops, just wait for that to restart right here. And then in here, do npm run start backend. So the new script we just wrote to start our backend. Okay, so here's our front end now, and here is our backend. Great. So that is all we need to do. Now let's go to writing up our backend. If you are having any troubles at this point, it could be down to the fact that you haven't installed NVM, okay, or Node. So if you haven't, please go ahead and download Node here. okay, just like so for your computer or for your machine, and then go ahead and run this command in order to be able to use NVM. So now that we have done all those things, let's get going. So the first thing we're going to do is define the port on which I want my backend to run, which is going to be 8000. And the next thing I'm going to do is just going to instantiate Express, right? So for this, we need the Express package. So require Express. And now I'm going to get Express, so all of the package's wonderfulness, call it, and I'll save it as something else. I'm going to save as app so that we can use it in this file with all of its wonderfulness. Okay, so that's all I've done. Now the next package we're going to need is a package called cause. So let's go ahead and do that. And this will just help us make requests without being blocked. If you have come across being blocked by cause, you will know what I mean by this. And we're also going to require the package .env in order to be able to save stuff to a .env file. So in other words, to save our API key to the .env file so that it's not uploaded onto GitHub or anything like that. And the one last one we need is Axios, right, in order to make requests. So const Axios equals require Axios, just like so. Great. So now that we have that, I'm actually just going to listen out on my server. So I'm going to use Express. So this is something that comes with Express. Listen comes with Express, or as we've now called it, app. And we're going to listen to changes on the port. Okay, and we're just going to console log out, console log server running on port, and then the actual port that we've saved up here. Great. So now you will see that here, server running on port 8000. So this is looking good. Let's carry on. The first thing we're going to do to communicate with our backend is get the URL. So to get the URL, all I'm going to do is just go in here. Let's sign back in as we have been signed out. I'm just going to go ahead and do that. I'm going back into our Monday clone. And now let's go ahead and connect to our database. So all I'm going to do is get my application token. So click here to get our application token. Just going to go in here actually, because we will be needing this. I'm going to go const token so that we can save it in here as well. Oops. Const token. And now I'm just going to generate a new token. Okay, so once you get your token, let's carry on. So let's now go back in here and then let's launch the Swagger UI. So I'm just going to launch that Swagger UI. And the first thing that we are going to do, right, is we're going to want to create a new ticket, but directly from our UI. So to do this, we're going to create a new ticket or create a new document. But first, we actually need to create a collection. So create a new collection in the namespace is the one we're going to try out. And in here, I'm just going to paste the Cassandra token again. And the key space name, or the key space name that we saved this as was the key space tickets. So I'm just going to put in tickets here. And what should we call our collection? Well, we can call it whatever we want, but I'm going to call it string tasks. Okay, so that's all you have to do, and then execute this. And there we go, that has worked. We've got 201 response. So this is the URL we need in order to create tickets. This is where we need to essentially make our requests. So all I'm going to do for now is just paste that URL right here, just like so. Maybe let's make this a little bit smaller so everyone can read. Okay, so here is our URL, but this is the URL in order to make tickets in our collection. So we might be changing this up later, but for now that looks good. So let's go ahead and do this. So to create tickets, well, it's going to be a post request, right? So app post. And I'm going to say that if we post to the path tickets, well, this is going to be an async function, and I'm going to pass through a request and a response, just like so. And we're going to have to pass through the form data that we just collected in the form that we made. So we're going to do this request body form data. So we're going to have to pass that through from the front end. And once we have that form data, I am going to essentially make an Axios post request to our database. So the options we need for this are, so const options, the method is going to be a post method. And the headers we need are going to be accepts application JSON, Xandra token. Well, that's just going to be our token that we stored up there. And then content type is going to be application JSON. Okay, so there we go, our method, our headers, and the last thing we need to pass through is the actual data we want to send to the backend, which is the, you guessed it, the form data. So those are our options. Now let's do this thing. So I'm going to use try and catch. So try is going to be, well, we're going to have to get the response from when we make our Axios request. I'm just going to pass through the URL and the options. Okay. However, will the URL be the same? Well, let's check it out. So this is what the URL is for when we, create a collection. However, if we want to, I'm just going to copy this. If we want to add a new document to a collection, so let's try it out. Just going to put in our API key again. The key space name is tickets, and this is going to be tasks. And now the body. Well, let's just create a fake task. In fact, I'm just going to go in here and just get one from the dummy data that we have up here. So the dashboard. And then let's just go ahead and copy one of these. We don't really need the colors anymore because that is something that we are going to be assigning here later. So let's get rid of the colors. I'm just going to copy all of this and just paste it. Okay. And make sure that it is formatted for this kind of document. So I'm just going to get rid of all the spaces here. And then we're going to have to put everything in strings. Okay, so all the properties are going to be strings. So not everything. Of course, if it's a number, it's a number. But all the properties have to be strings. So I'm just going to go ahead and do that now. It seems we need to make everything double quotes and then hit execute. And great, so we get the 201 code and we also get a document ID. So we have now manually added this object to our tasks collection in our tickets namespace. And so to do this again, we would have to get this URL. This is the request URL. So I'm just going to change this up here because this is the URL to add a new collection, whereas this is the URL to add a new task to our task collection. So that is the URL that we need. So I'm passing through the URL, I'm passing through the options, and whatever comes back, I'm saving this as the response. Oops, this should be post. And now if this works, res status 200, I just want to essentially show the response data. Okay, and then we're going to catch the errors. So catch error console log error, but then also res status 500 JSON message error. Great. So there we go. There is a whole code in order to post a new task to our database. But first we need to pass through the form data. So not in the dashboard, but on the ticket page. Just going to do this up here. Now, in the handle submit, so let's just get rid of that. We actually need to prevent default because once you submit a form, the natural thing for I guess React or JavaScript want to do is to refresh the whole page, right? But we don't want this, so that's why I did ePrevent default. And then let's also make this an async function, because we are going to have to essentially make a post request to our backend. So not to our database, to our backend with the form data. So I'm going to write if is not in edit mode, okay? So if we're just literally creating a new ticket, I'm going to, so const response, because we're going to have to get the response. Wait, Axios, this is a post request. So let's also import Axios from Axios. And what I'm going to do is post to the URL that we just defined on localhost 8000, localhost 8000 / tickets. And then I'm just going to pass through what we want to send to here. So what essentially we want to send to here, we want to send the form data, right? So I'm just going to pass through an object which has the form data. So just like so. And I mean, that's really it. So now if it's a success, so I'm just going to say if response status equals 200, so if it's a success, I'm just going to say this as the const success. If success, so if response status is 200, well then I also want to navigate back to the home page. So back to the home page like so. Okay, so that's how you would do it. Let's now also go ahead and import use navigate from React router DOM, and now let's use navigate and essentially just call it. So where can I do it? Perhaps let's just do that up here. Const navigate equals use navigate and call it. Okay, so that will allow us to navigate to the home page if there is a success. So let's see if this has worked. So back in here, what I'm going to do is create a new ticket. So let's call this my first task. Owner Ania. Description, this is my first task. The category is going to be test 1. New category, or maybe let's make a new category, test 3. Priority 2. And the avatar for me, well, let's just go back to free code camp. Copy the image address and just paste it in here. So, and submit. And let's check it out. Something has not gone right, because otherwise we would have been redirected to the home page. That is because this needs to be, there we go. Don't put the S in here. Let's try this again. So now let's check this out. Progress 0, priority. Let's do 3. Why is this not selecting though? So here's the ticket page. It should be showing me whatever I have checked. Form data priority 1. It is saving not as a string. Okay, well, we can just for now not make it strict to types. So let's make it loose, meaning that it doesn't matter if it's a string or a number. Then that should come back as true, meaning that it will be checked. Okay, that is better. So now let's check it out. Let's submit. And it has been blocked by the CORS policy. Well, luckily we installed the correct package for that, which was the CORS package. So let's go ahead and use that in order to get over this or get by this. So all I'm going to do is use app, use, and then pass through CORS and just call it. And while we're here, I'm also going to do app use express JSON in order for us to work with JSON better. So great. Now let's try again. Submit. And there we go. So that has worked because we have been taken to the home page. And now if we get our data, we should see that object being added. Okay, so we've done it. We have successfully added a new ticket from our UI. However, we're still just seeing the dummy data here, right? So let's change this. Let's get the actual data that we have in our database. So to do this, I am going to use app get. And I'm going to get the tickets if we visit again the same path, okay, because this is a post request, this is a get request, so we can do that. Let's also make this an async function and pass through the request and response. Let's also define our options. So our options, well, I'm actually just going to copy paste these and make this a get request. We don't need this content type actually, so let's get rid of that. Let's get rid of this comma. And now we're going to do try, and we're going to just get maybe the, okay, let's say this as response, await, Axios, and then I'm going to get the URL, but I'm going to add something to the URL actually, just to make sure this works at first. And I'm just going to get the first 20 because we don't want, you know, like going on forever. I'm just going to get the first 20 to see if this works. And I'm going to pass through the options. Okay. And then once again, res status 200. I'm just going to show the response data. And now let's catch the errors. So once again, catch error. And then I'm just gonna. So this should be able to get us all our tickets. And in fact, if I just visit localhost 8000 on the browser, so localhost 8000 / tickets, you will see the 2 tickets. So that was the first one we added ages ago, and that's the one we just added now. Great, so that is working, which means that now we can go to our dashboard and actually get rid of these. I'm just going to comment this out for now because this dummy data is kind of valuable. In fact, maybe let's just move it to a separate file just so we can keep it. Obviously, you're not really going to need it, but I'm just going to keep it here so you can, you know, use it as you wish. So this is going to say dummy data JS. I'm just going to paste that in here. Oops. And uncomment out. Okay, so again, that's just there for you if you wish. So now in here, however, let's actually get the actual data from our database, right? So import Axios from Axios. We're also going to have to import use state, use effect, and actually use context too from React, because we're going to be saving the tickets to state. So const tickets, this is the tickets from our database, set tickets, use state null to start off with. And now let's use the use effect. And I'm going to actually pass through this async function in order to get our tickets from localhost 8000 / tickets. So again, just use await Axios get, and then I'm literally going to get them from here. So I'm going to copy that and just paste it in here like so. And then let's save the response. And now because the response comes back kind of like this, you see the object document IDs outside of the object. I actually want that to be in the object. So I'm going to show you how to reformat this data. So what I'm going to do is get the response data. So this is the response data, which will be this object right here with the 2 objects. So let's get that. So response data to get the object of all the data, and save this as the const data object. So once again, the data object I'm talking about is literally this that holds two objects. So that's what I've saved it as. And I'm actually going to make an array of keys. Okay, so array of keys. Okay, so what I mean by this is the object keys, which is actually this right here and this right here. And I can do so easily by getting the object keys and passing through the data object. So that's my array of keys. And next I need the array of data. And what I'm essentially going to do is make this and this. So take both of those and put them in an array so they're easier to work with, because at the moment they're in an object. So to do this, I am going to actually get object keys, again, pass through the data object, and this time map each key and pass it through the data object like this as an array. So there we go. And if I console log this, I'm going to console log both out so you can see what they both look like. So array of keys. And then let's do the same for array of data. Okay, let's go back in here. So here's my array of data. As you will see here, it is literally the two objects that I showed you in an array. So there's one of them and there's two of them and they're in an array. And my array of keys is literally an array of the document IDs. So now let's use these two arrays and combine them together. So it's a formatted array of objects that we can use, which essentially is just going to be this existing object with this document ID inside of it, and the same for this. So great, now that we know what that looks like, let's carry on. So I want to format this data, like I said, so I'm just going to make an empty array for now, const formatted data, just making an empty array, and then, or we can call it formatted array if we want, or formatted data, it's up to you. And I'm going to get the array of keys, and for each key, let's make this a little bit bigger actually, for each key, we are actually also going to have an index. Let's make sure to wrap this like so. I am going to get the formatted data. Actually, let's call this formatted array. And now what I'm going to do is make an object, right? So there's going to be my new object that I'm making. And in my object, well, what do I want to do? Well, I want to go into the array of data and just get the first item or whatever item we are, looping over in the for each. So that's why I've got the index there. So I'm putting that in here. And then I'm also into my formatted data. So let's grab it. We're going to put in a new key called document ID. So that's how you do that. And that is just going to have the value of this key. So the key of arrays. Okay, and then I'm just going to get my formatted data that I just made, so the formatted object, and I'm going to put it into my formatted array using the push JavaScript method. Okay, so that was a bit long. Let's make sure this is camel case. But now, if we console log the formatted array, you will see, ta-da! So we've got an array of two objects, and this time each of them have the document ID in there so that we can work with it. Okay, we've created, essentially, we've just reformatted the data that we have to make it work in our favor. So great. So now that we have our formatted array, what do I want to do with it? Well, I just want to use set tickets and then pass through the formatted array. Great. So now that we have our tickets, that should be mapped onto here. And there we go. So there's my first task, and there's build and sell the AI model that we added at the very beginning. So this is looking great. Okay, let's carry on. Now, at the moment, I am still just hard coding the categories. However, what I would like to do is actually get the categories. So whenever we get all our data, right? So I want to get these categories and use them for when we create a ticket in order to populate this. So for this, we're going to use context. Okay, so all I'm going to do is actually down here when we, get the unique categories, we should also be saving the categories. Well, we can do it in the dashboard. In fact, yes, let's do it here. So what I'm going to do is do const categories, set categories, use state, and we're just going to start off with them being null. And when we get the unique categories, I'm actually just going to set the categories for this page, just like so. Okay, so that is now being saved to the state of this component. And it also means that if we want to then, take it outside of this component to be used on the other page, we can actually make a context file. So perhaps let's do that. So in the source directory, I'm just going to make a new file, and let's call this context.js. And in here, I'm going to import create context from React. And now let's actually define our category context. So categories context. And I'm going to use create context. And I'm going to say categories to start off with is null, and set categories is just going to be this, I guess, empty function for now. Okay, so that's my categories context. Let's export it so we can use it. Export default categories context. So that's what this file should look like. We've exported that here. So now we can use it. So let's go back in here, and I'm going to import categories context from context, which means we don't need to use context here, and we actually don't need this here anymore. Okay, so now it does mean that I can just get whatever the categories are, and I can get set categories from here. Okay, so we're going to use context, categories context. We do actually need, sorry, use context. Okay, so great. So that is our categories now, which means that when we set the unique categories, we're using set categories in order to save them to the context here. And it also means that we can use them in this page now. So let's go ahead and once again, import categories context from context. And now let's actually get the categories. So const categories set categories, use context categories context, and of course let's get use context from React as well, categories. And it just means that we can get rid of these now. And now, final thing, we just need to go to the app.js file and once again import categories context from context, and we're going to have to wrap all of this in a context provider. Okay, so to do this in the app, I'm just going to use the categories context and do provider. And then, oops, let's wrap all of this in here. And this is where we're going to store the state of categories. So on the whole app, comes categories, set categories, use state now. And then the value we're going to pass through as categories, set categories. Okay. So there's our, oops, value. And of course, we need to import use state from React. Oops, maybe let's just set a value here instead. And then we're just going to pass through the value like so. Okay, actually, we don't set the categories after we get the unique categories because we don't have the categories yet, right? So in here, we somehow need to set the categories, or perhaps let's do it in a separate use effect as to not get this very messy. So I'm going to write another use effect down here. I'm going to set the categories in here. So for this, again, we just want them unique. So I'm basically going to do nearly the same code. We're going to do new set, and then we're going to pass through if tickets exist. We're going to map each ticket. We're going to go into the object and get the category, and then we're just going to essentially return the category, right? So category to make an array of the categories. Okay, so very, very similar code, but I'm just doing it in its own kind of use effect. Okay, so now let's see if that has worked. Let's add a new ticket, and great, you will see the categories showing up here. So that is how you use useContext. Wonderful. However, it's getting a lot of calls because we haven't put in an empty array of dependencies like so. Great. So this is looking good. Let's carry on. So let's just check this works one last time. My latest task owner, I'm just going to do Ania again. Copy image address, paste that in here. Description, my latest task. The categories, let's create a new category, or let's keep it as Q1. Priority 5, submit. Oh no, I don't want this to be mandatory. So ticket page, and wherever it tells us to potentially make a new category, I don't want this to be required. So let's just get rid of this because it's optional and submit. And great. So there is my latest task. However, why does it not have a category? Let's see what happened here. It would seem a category was not assigned, so we need to have a default for this if we don't select one. So let's just go back in here. And if this doesn't exist, I'm just going to go into the categories and just get the first item. Okay, so we've got them here. Let's try again. I think we know this works now, so let's do test 3. Then I go here, owner Ania, and once again, copy image address, avatar. So this should go under category test 3. Let's see if that's worked. And great. Actually, we only want this to get called if the tickets change, right? Console log categories. So we've got our categories. So we still have this task that doesn't have a category. I'd like to be able to delete it. So I'm going to show you how to do that now. So in the server, I'm going to do app post. Right under app post, let's do app delete and get to writing our code. So I'm just going to maybe move this down a little bit so we can see it clearly. And app delete, well, what I'm going to do is go into the tickets, and I'm just going to say that whatever ID I pass through, so whatever document ID I pass through, that is the essential ticket that I want to delete. So request response, and I'm going to get the params of this. So the ID is going to be rec params document ID and const options. My options are going to be, well, the method this time is going to be delete, and the headers are going to be accepts application JSON, and then the X Cassandra token is just going to be the token. And then we're going to do try, and we're going to await Axios, and I'm going to pass through the URL. However, we're going to pass through the existing URL, but then also the ID. Okay, so that's the URL you need to pass through, and the options, and then res status 200 JSON, and we're just going to show the response data. And of course, once again, we're going to catch any errors. So there we go. And once again, I'm just going to copy this from here. Great. So let's also save this as the response. Okay, so that's the URL that we are going to essentially visit on our database, and it's going to delete the document by its document ID that we need to pass through. So now in our components on our delete block, let's get this up a little bit better. I am going to import Axios from Axios, and I'm going to pass through the document ID into my delete block. And let's make this now an async function, and instead of console logging out just deleted, we're going to do something. We're going to await Axios delete, and we're going to pass through the URL http localhost 8000 tickets, and then whatever the document ID is, right? So document ID. So that is looking good. Let's save the response. And let's check if this is a success. Status equals 200. We don't have to make that super strict. Let's save this as success. So if success, then I just want window location reload. Right? Okay. So how do we pass this through? Well, on the dashboard, here we go. And then on the ticket card, there's our delete block. So let's pass through the document ID as the ticket document ID. And let's check it out. Oops, what did we have here? Left an S. So now if I click here, amazing. So that has worked. We are deleting that ticket. So we can now add tickets, we can delete tickets, and then also we can get all the tickets. We've got one last thing to do, that's edit an existing ticket. So if we click on a ticket, we don't want to go to create ticket, we want to go to edit ticket mode. So I'm going to show you how to do that now. So on the ticket here, well, we're going to link to a specific ticket, which we are at the moment. See, here's the document ID. So we are linking to a specific ticket. However, we are just literally going to the ticket page, right? Edit mode is not being shown, so we need to change that. So if the path is this, edit mode should be true. So edit mode should be passed in through here, like so, which means it doesn't need to be hard-coded. So if edit mode is true, it should say update your ticket, and we're seeing all these other extra things. So we've got the UI correct, okay? So this is different to if you were just to visit /ticket. Oops. Let's go back. So here's the page to see the ticket, and if we're just to click a ticket, it will be update your ticket. So we've got the UI, like I said. Now let's do the backend stuff in order to edit a specific ticket. So for this, we're going to have to use a put request. So let's just maybe tidy this up a tiny little bit. So we've got our delete request. We've got our post request. We've got our request to get all the tickets. So here, I'm just going to do a put request to edit a specific ticket. I'm just going to space it out. App put, and once again, it's just going to go to /tickets. However, it's going to go to specific document ID, so we know which ticket we want to edit. And of course, once again, we're going to have to get the ID from the params. So we're just getting that. Okay, that's what this little line does, and we've got the ID now. And we're also going to have to get the data, which is the existing data that exists, so that we can, know exactly what it is we want to change in our existing object. So that is one thing we are going to have to do. But first off, on the ticket page, we're also going to have to populate this with the ticket with this ID. So I'm going to show you how to do that as well. So another thing we're going to use from React Router DOM is use params in order to literally get this from the URL. So I'm going to use params. Let's maybe do it right here. Let ID equals use params and call it. Okay, so now our ID is being saved as this essentially. And I'm going to have to fetch the data based on the ID. So I'm going to write a function called fetch data, just like so. It is actually going to be an async function. So let's make sure that it's async. And our fetch data function, we're going to use await axios get http /localhost tickets, and then of course the document ID. But for this, it's actually just called ID, right? Because we've got it from the URL. So we can just do that. Okay, and let's save the response. So this will essentially, this is the same as me, what I've started writing in the back. So if I was to go / like this, it should return the one ticket. So that's essentially what I'm going to be doing here. On the back end, I'm going to write some code that will allow me to fetch one ticket based on the ID that I'm passing through. And if I visit this path on the back end. Okay, so let's carry on in here now. Once again, I'm going to have to use the options. The method is going to be a put request. The headers, well, this is going to say accepts application JSON, and I'm just going to once again pass through the X Cassandra token, which is just going to be the token, and also the data that we want to update our object with. And then once we have our options, we're going to use try, await Axios, and then we're going to pass through the URL, but with the ID. So in fact, I'm just going to get this from here. I'm actually going to get all of this because it is exactly the same as it is in the delete request. So at the moment, we are passing through the ID. We are not passing through the data. But before we do any of this, we also want to write a path in order to get an individual post coming back to us, so an individual task. So now I'm going to get all of this again. And just under where we get all our tickets, I'm going to get just one ticket. So there we go, app get. We don't need a body for this. So let's get rid of that. We don't really pass through data. We literally just want to define a path that will allow us to get one task based on the document ID and show it in the browser on the backend. So now let's check it out. And great. So now we have written the code. This is the code that will allow us to get one task coming back if we visit this path on the back end. And once we have that, once we can just get one ticket, I'm going to use that on the ticket page and I'm going to fetch the data. So I'm literally going to visit this URL. So we're going to get that response and we're going to override the form data. So whatever's in the form data with the response data, okay, to populate our app. So, but we're only going to do it if it's an edit mode, right? So we're going to use useEffect. And if edit mode is true, then we want to fetch the data. And I'm just going to put through an empty array. Okay. So of course we also need use effect in here too. And great. So now if we visit here, we need to probably get response data to be set as the form. Great. So that is now populating our form so that we can edit it. So what we have done, we've fetched the data, populate our page, and now let's write the function. So we're just going to actually add in here that if we submit, we don't want to essentially create a new post, we want to edit a post, right? So if in edit mode, response equals await Axios, put this time, and we're going to essentially edit a certain ticket, which is why we need the ID, and we're going to edit it with the new form data, right? So form data, just like so. And once again, we could just grab this because if it's a success, we just want to navigate to the home page. So now that we have that, let's carry on writing our code in the backend. So where we edit the data, where we edit an individual post or task, we are now passing through the document ID and we are now passing through the data. So this should now work. Let's check it out. So all I'm going to do is for my first task, I'm going to say the owner or is Danny, and then let's find a random image of Danny profile. Sure, it could be this guy. It's gonna copy image address. Okay, and let's click submit. So there we go. We have just updated that. We have edited it so that I'm not the task manager anymore. Danny is. Okay, so great. This is looking good. I love it. And of course, we could change the progress as well. So let's put priority 5. This is how much progress has been done. And let's put stuck. And let's click submit. So as you can see, that has now been updated. That has been updated too. This is looking really good. And of course, we can just go ahead and delete all of these too. So I can go ahead and delete and delete and delete. No projects. And let's go ahead and add some projects again. So I'm just going to use my dummy data for this. So let's go to our dummy data. Just going to move this around. Just like so, just to make it look a little bit nicer, I guess. Let's put in the category here. I'm going to put it as new category, priority 3, owner, Ania, and then we've got our URL of me. So again, I'm just doing this to check everything works and submit. So there we go. Let's add another one. This time it's going to say build and sell AI model. Description, once again, is just going to be make a video about AI. Keep the same category, priority 3, owner, Ania. And once again, let's just put in the same avatar of me. Oops. Just going to copy that, paste it, and submit. So now you've got no, that didn't work. Why is this? So for some reason, did we not select a category? We did, but I don't like it when it's blank. So let's just update this, submit. Okay, so that's now gone. Okay, and that's the only category, good. Let's make another one. So this time let's do build a bot, owner, Danny, description, make a video about a bot, priority 3, and then let's get another Danny this time. Let's get this guy or this guy, I don't know. So many Dannys. I'm just going to paste that in here, submit. Okay, so again, category thing is not working. Why is that? Ticket to page. I'm not going to have this. Maybe let's have or new category as a default if one isn't selected, so that it's very obvious. Okay, so one last time, I'm just going to leave this blank. Danny, submit. And is there a default? I'm going to put category, categories. Move this around a little bit. So now, categories, okay. So that's kind of doing that, even though it's not a very nice hack, but I guess it's okay. Let's try again. Copy image address. Okay, so that is now always as default going to be the first category. And then, of course, you know, I can change it if I want to. So, great. Let's change it again. Maybe let's make this Q1. And wonderful. Okay, I'm really happy with this. I think this is looking pretty cool. Let's just try changing some of these. Done. Okay, and that is changing too. And there we have it. So there is our Monday clone. I hope you've enjoyed this video. Of course, you can't just deploy this. There is still a few things that you need to do. One being that we need to move everything into a .env file. So I'm just going to do that with you now. And also you probably should, oops, not JavaScript file. You should probably also proxy the URLs and stuff. So stuff like this, you know, you do obviously if you deploy this, then you don't want to be going to localhost 8000 anymore. So please make sure to do that. If you're not just using this for a fun learning project and you want to start deploying it, then you have to think about safety of your API keys and your backend and stuff like that. But, you know, for a casual project, then this is fine. So all I'm going to do is actually just save the URL. So URL and the Astra token in here as well. Okay, so those are the only things I'm really going to save. And it just means that on the server, I'm just going to get rid of them from here. And just this one here. Save that. And it just means that now I can use process env URL and process env Astra token instead. And there we have it, okay? Please let me know what you think. Please take this project, please, you know, improve on it, make it your own, style it up. It's really up to you. I'm going to go ahead and clean up this code and share it with you in the description below if you want to have a look or if you get stuck. Okay? So thanks very much and I will see you again soon.